Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Continuing our speculation for the Hisuian Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. Assuming this one is actually going to make it into the game, we do know that Hisuian forms are confirmed, but we don't know how many. Anyway, today's video is about Basculegion. So Basculegion is Water and Ghost, which it does have a solid 5 super effective stabs. It's not that bad defensively either. It's only weak to 4 typings. And you do have the dual immunity that comes from Ghost, while also resisting 6 typings. So overall, this is a pretty solid typing. It's not overly weak, and it's not so defensive that it has no offense. Now, the abilities of Basculegion are Rattled, Adaptability, and Mold Breaker. Rattled is probably the least useful of its abilities. Adaptability is very strong, and even though Mold Breaker is not really as good as Adaptability, there is a point for having Mold Breaker on this mon specifically, which we'll get into later. Now, the male and female have different stats. So if we look at the male, it is more physically offensive, having 112 physical attack and 80 special attack, compared to the female's 92 attack and 100 special attack. So the stats on the female form are more spread out and slightly less optimal. However, the typing of this mon synergizes better with special attack, which is probably why the stats are the way they are. Now the rest of the stats are nothing special. Defense is kind of low at 65 base, special defense is 75, speed 78, hit points 120, that's pretty decent, but this is a bit physically squishy, and it's not really fast, but it's not slow, it's that weird middling kind of fast stat. So overall, not really the greatest stats out there, but they're not the worst either. And this does get a signature move called Wave Crash, which is a 75 power physical water move that damages the user and raises the user's action speed. Now, in a VGC format, that's not going to function the same. Instead of raising the user's action speed, it'll most likely give you a stage up on speed. Now, 75 power is really not that much. The other physical water moves Basculegion gets is Aqua Jet and Aqua Tail. The physical offense for water is really not that good on this, but neither is the special, because its only special water move is Water Pulse. Like, it doesn't even get Hydro Pump, which is kind of odd, and that might be something that changes if it were in Gen 9, because its move pool just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't even get a physical ghost move at all. If you want to make full use of the adaptability bonus, you're kind of stuck running special attacks, or maybe even mixed, because it has slightly better physical water, but it doesn't have physical ghost. This thing doesn't synergize well with adaptability. It does have a little bit of coverage in the form of Ice Beam, which can cover grass, but after that it gets like psychic type moves, which is really not helpful for this typing. It doesn't cover any weakness, so most likely you're just gonna run stab moves with Ice Beam. This does make sense as a mixed attacker, although mixed attackers are typically not very strong in a competitive format. Let's see, how would I build this thing? I'd probably build around adaptability, even though Mold Breaker could help you against, say, the Gastrodon matchup, where you can just completely ignore Storm Drain. Adaptability gives this a lot of offense, as long as you're running stab moves, which Ghost and Water are different enough from each other. You should be able to hit just about anything for at least neutrally effective damage, aside from like a Water Dark type. I guess normal Dragon would also be an issue, but Drampa's not very popular. So I think adaptability probably with either Wave Crash or Aqua Tail. I don't think you would run both. I'm not sure if Wave Crash would actually be stronger than 75 power, because the user does take a third of damage inflicted, which if we look at other moves similar to this, like Flare Blitz and Woodhammer, those are 120 power moves, even though you do take a fair bit of damage from those. So there's a good possibility that the base power in Gen 9 would be equivalent to the strong style, which is 90 power, in which case I would probably run it over Aqua Tail, because it's a little more consistent, and if it does give you increased speed, that would be quite nice to have, because then you could make up for this thing's mediocre speed step. That combined with the priority of Aqua Jet and perhaps some coverage in the form of Ice Fang, this thing would be reasonably set up. The problem here is just the move pool's not very diverse. So if you are running a more physically biased version, you definitely want to go for the male because of that higher attack stat. The thing is, if you're wanting to play more around Shadow Ball and you want to run Ice Beam as your coverage, you most likely want to go for the female. Now, initially I thought this thing would be really strong because you have adaptability with Water and Ghost. You just hit stuff and they explode. The thing is, that's kind of its only trick. It doesn't do anything else. And I feel like that high specialization really keeps this from being oppressive. Like, sure, it does do a lot of damage if it hits you first. It's kind of squishy. You could just smack it with a strong physical dark type move and it probably goes down. So I could definitely see Focus Sash being run on this because of how squishy it is. Otherwise, it's not incredibly consistent. Yes, it is pretty strong offensively, but you're having to work around that speed stat that is possibly not good enough to get its high offense out. And while this combination of typings is fairly decent in an offensive capacity, I think the limited moveset is really hurting its flexibility because they kind of just gave it enough, which means this thing only ever has like one build that it runs. It's just going to be so predictable. And I feel like that high predictability combined with the very awkward stats to work around is really going to keep this out of the meta. Now, I actually think this is better in a best of 3 than on the ranked ladder because consistency matters over predictability in a best of 3 format. And while I think in the right team comp, this would be reasonably consistent, it is a little awkward to position and it's awkward to place in a team. So overall, I think it's fine. It's not particularly good, but it's not bad. It's just very predictable and lacks a lot of flexibility. Though I do think you will see it occasionally. This is most likely going to be a mon that shows up kind of early in the meta and starts to die out pretty quickly once everyone figures out, oh, it just does one thing. Kind of like Galarian Darmanitan in Gen 8, which people thought it was very strong at first because it was very offensive, and then people realized, oh wait, it just does one thing. You like use Fake Out and you like tap it with any move and it explodes. This is not quite as frail, but it is also a bit less flexible in its moveset. So yeah, not expecting a whole lot here, but it can work. I just don't think a lot of people will be willing to put in the effort to make it work. Well, anyway, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.